Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for being with us and taking your time out of your schedule to join us today. My name is Edilah Jordan. I am Senior Director of Transformative Communities at Dream.org. If you are newly joining us today, I'll tell you a little bit about Dream. Dream.org is a national 501(c)(3) that sits at the intersection of climate equity, criminal justice reform, and tech innovation. Our work is rooted in belief that communities most impacted by injustice should also have real power in shaping solutions. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge each of you who have joined us today. Your presence reflects a shared commitment to community-centered solutions and to standing alongside partners who are navigating hyperscale data center issues on the ground every day. Today's Midweek MythBuster is part of our Stop Toxic Tech Green the Grid campaign, and we are focusing on grid transmission. Transmission is not inherently bad or unnecessary. It becomes harmful when it is rushed, opaque, disconnected from communities' needs, and built without consent or safeguards. This conversation is about unpacking that nuance and grounding in real world impact and live experience. Before we dive in, please take a moment to drop your name, pronouns, and where you're joining from in the chat. Also, we would love for each of you to stay connected with our work. So if you could take out your phones for a quick second and send a text to 97483 and text the word toxic. And you're going to, again, text the word toxic to 97483 to join our campaign. Well, you are truly in for a treat, guys. I'm so excited about the partners and leaders who are joining us today on our panel. Before we transition, I do want to briefly lift up a new resource that our campaign just released called Tracking the Truth About Toxic Tech. This report examines how hyperscale data centers and AI infrastructure development often moves behind a veil of secrecy, with incomplete or inconsistent disclosures that leave communities without the information they need to understand real impact on water, energy, air quality, and local resources. Tracking the Truth About Toxic Tech breaks down those disclosure gaps and outlines what transparency and accountability should actually look like. So communities can ask informed questions and demand safeguards. This report is just the first release of our new policy toolkit, a part of our campaign. We'll also be releasing another resource today called Transmission 101. So we're
Here we
super
go.
excited about that. And we will be rolling out a new resource every other month in alignment with our Midweek MythBuster webinar. These tools are designed to support local grassroots, organizers, coalition partners, as well as funders in building and shaping the understanding around data center accountability, transparency, and community power. Next, we're going to review our agenda really quickly. We are going to hear from some dynamic panelists listed here. We have Loralei Hojay, who is our policy associate here at dream.org. She's going to lay the groundwork. She's going to give us what is transmission all about. So she's going to do a deep dive in that. We're also going to hear from Maggie Shober, who is from Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, and Katie Miner from the Alliance for Affordable Energy. And we are going to be moderated by none other than Mr. Keyshawn Pearson from Memphis Community Against Pollution. We're going to have a Q&A and then have an opportunity again for you guys to get involved.
Thank you so much, EJ. Um, this is an incredible group of people, and I'm just glad to be here and so thankful to be the host for this webinar. As y'all know, or some of you, and some of you may be new, my name is Keyshawn Pearson, and I am a partner with Dream.org with my organization, Memphis Community Against Pollution. And we have been working closely together for almost, what is it, EJ? Almost a year, almost 2 years now, um,
Absolutely.
on Stop Toxic Tech and all that this program has done across the country, but more specifically in our backyard in Memphis. And so, locally here in Memphis, we are fighting against toxic tech in the manifestation of XAI. It is the computation headquarters for Grok, which is used by, Twitter. Well, they call it X now, and it's now being used by Tesla and other organizations. So, for almost 2 years, unlawfully. There have been 33 methane gas turbines, up to 33 methane gas turbines burning at the Colossus 1 facility that is in Southwest Memphis, bordering a majority Black community called Boxtown and Westwood. And that's where I'm from. And so on January 9th of this year, it was confirmed by the United States Environmental Protection Agency that turbines like this and operations like this actually require permits that meet the Clean Air Act standards. So the expansion of XAI is detrimental if it is not within the rights of if they are not following the rules of the Clean Air Act. Just last week, the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality hosted a public hearing because XAI is requesting to add 41 methane gas turbines to the site in Mississippi. So, the fight here in the Mid South and in Memphis for clean air and to green the grid and not darken our skies with pollution continues. And there will be more information about MCAP, about who we are and what we do, placed in the chat. So, first, when I think about the future that we are working diligently to build, I think about just how important it is to have the right energy, right? And we've talked about how to create it in a toxic way. But my question really revolves around how can we create the clean energy to green the grid in the ways we want to? And then how is that energy going to be distributed? I've always been taught that the difference between your questions and your answers is a person who knows how to connect the dots. And so in this case, I'd like to introduce you all to Loralei. Loralei is the Policy and Government Affairs Associate at Dream.org. Prior to joining Dream.org, she spent years in DC working on federal policy issues related to economic justice and energy and infrastructure. She previously served the Domestic Policy Council at the White House under the Biden-Harris administration, as well as the U.S. Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. And so, welcome, Loralei. And I have a few questions for you that revolve around energy and our grid. And so I'm just get started with the first question. And it might seem like an obvious thing, but can you just for a second explain or elaborate on, um, as it pertains to the grid, what a transmission system even is, and like how do those networks operate, and then why are transmissions so important to grid resilience?
Yeah. Hi. Well, I feel like these days, especially with with the development of data centers, we're always talking about the power grid. But, a lot of people don't actually know what that even means. The power grid generally can be summed up as an interconnected network composed of three key components. So there's the generation of power, and then there's the transmission of power, and then there's the distribution of power. So power is produced at a generation site, usually a power plant, usually in a remote location that isn't immediately accessible to consumers like you and I. Uh, Large-scale renewable energy sources in particular, and we'll get into this later, are usually concentrated in rural areas in the US and that are geographically inaccessible to the demand centers where we're actually consuming the energy. And that's where the transmission comes in. To transport electricity from a generation site to the consumers and the populated demand centers, power has to travel across states via high voltage transmission lines. And so that's where the transmission comes in. Before leaving a generation site or a power plant, you would have a substation, which is where substations act kind of as a traffic controller for the electricity. So before leaving a generation site, a transformer will increase the voltage of an energy load to a higher voltage level. That basically just makes sure that transmission of power over long distances is more efficient by minimizing the energy loss. So the higher the voltage, the lower the energy loss during transmission as the power travels along the lines. Then transmission, the lines themselves are the vehicle that transports electricity from the generation sites to us consumers in populated areas. Uh, Before the electricity nears a populated area, the electricity is directed to another substation where you will have voltage step down. Uh, at a step down station, the transformers will reduce the voltage to a lower level, which just makes it safer for distribution. And then from a substation, the electricity travels through lower voltage distribution lines that then deliver the energy to homes, businesses, and other end users. So basically, generation site, it travels through a transmission line, and then it gets distributed to you and I. Uh, and well-planned transmission does offer a lot of benefits to communities. Transmission can decrease consumer electricity bills. They can connect clean energy resources to the grid and help reduce emissions in that way, and reduce harmful pollutants in doing so. And they also increase grid reliability and prevent power outages during severe climate and weather events. And I really want to focus on that last point because transmission, again, especially as these data centers come online, is key to greater grid resilience. And there are several real life examples of this that I think will make that a little more real for people. Texas is the only state in the continental United States that operates on its own grid. So because Texas operates on its own independent grid, they do not use interstate transmission lines. But that also means that Texas is not able to access energy in other areas of the country. And that the consequences of that have already manifested several times in the past. We all remember Winter Storm Uri in 2021. Uh, During that storm, Texas's independent grid, which again is not interstate, it's its own independent grid that only relies on energy within the state, suffered massive outages because of the isolation. Uh, but if Texas had been able to access and import energy from neighboring regions. And if they had had interstate transmission lines to better support the importing of that energy, Texas could have saved nearly $1 billion, and they could have kept the heat on and the lights on for hundreds of thousands of Texans. Uh, with stronger transmission ties during that same storm, other parts of the central United States could have avoided power outages and saved consumers hundreds of millions of dollars. In places like the Great Plains and those served in the Gulf Coast states, as well as those served by the southern part of the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, or MISO, we could have saved around $100 million with an additional 1 gigawatt of transmission ties to power systems in the East.
That's
So
right.
what I'm saying in a very complicated way is that when you are unable to access energy in other parts of the country, and then when we then suffer these extreme weather events, which we are seeing more and more of, the consequences are that you and I are paying hundreds of millions of dollars as a consequence, and the lights and the heat are going out for people when they need it the most. The same thing happened in Texas during the heat wave in 2019. There was that extended heat wave, which led to very high power prices across 12 days in 2019. Had Texas had an additional 1 gigawatt transmission tie to the southeast, Texas consumers could have saved around $75 million during that summer. And
And
there
one
are,
thing,
yeah,
Laura, like one thing, you are on a roll. That is a lot
yeah,
to process, I think, for everybody. So I do want to just take a couple steps. And one, recognize the fact that for prices are one element of it, but there was also a loss of life that happened because
yeah.
of right these extreme weather temperatures and these extreme weather events. So I do want to just hold space for that. And then just so that we're following along with the transmission process. So first, power is generated, then power's being transmitted to who's in the middle before it gets to us.
So that would be the transmission lines. That's how it travels from the generation site to us to be distributed.
Got you. And so when I think about that piece, a lot of people have seen legislation that talked about, increase in transmission lines, and they are skeptical, right, about pushing those transmission line, those policies forward. I think, what is it that people could be concerned about, and how can you kind of quell those concerns?
I think that the kinds of large interstate lines that we're talking about right now face some very similar obstacles to what tends to stifle the build out of things like affordable housing, which I think is an issue that mo people are more familiar with. If you ask a majority of Americans, do you support affordable housing as a concept? They're going to say, yes, I do support affordable housing. I support lower housing costs. But then when you go to actually build an affordable housing development in any given community, that's when you tend to get the pushback and some opposition, especially from, local residents and homeowners. Uh, and transmission seems to face kind of a similar issue where a majority of people, if you ask, do you support the transition to renewable energy? People will say, yes, of course I support the transition to renewable energy. A majority of people, at least. But then I think people don't make the link that you need transmission lines in order to support the transition to renewables. There is no transition to renewable or clean energy without transmission. I think there was a study done on this where a majority of respondents did not understand that there is a link between transmission and renewable energy. And I think that that's definitely one part of the issue is that tie has not been named explicitly enough, or maybe it hasn't been articulated enough to people for them to understand that the lines are part of the clean energy transition, and there's no getting around that. I think another part of the issue is perceived impact to property values. Uh, I think people see the big lines going up and the large substations going up, and they think this is going to impact my property values. The studies on this are actually kind of mixed. Some studies have showed that in some cases, property values did decrease. Other studies have shown that property values either stayed the same or in some cases even increased.
Mm,
But all of that is just to say that, it's not guaranteed that the property values will decrease because a transmission line is being built in your community. In some cases, your property values might even go up, especially if those new lines are bringing new investments or new roads or new jobs to a given area. Um,
gotcha. And I think that kind of lends into where we want to go. And so I'll just ask a question. Do you think, or from what you understand, do you believe, increasing transmission lines, increasing access to clean renewable energy will lend itself to creating a more affordable energy prices for communities?
oh, absolutely. Transmission does, it can definitely reduce electricity prices for consumers. And there have been lots of studies done on this. A well-planned transmission investment can save residential consumers around 6.3 to $10 billion annually nationwide after accounting for the cost of actually building the line. Um, for every dollar that we invest in a transmission line, consumers usually will receive around $4 to $5 in benefits. And so building large scale transmission combined with the build out of renewable energy and the ability to actually deliver that energy to people could cut consumer electric bills by over $100 billion cumulatively and decrease the average electric bill rate by more than a third by 2050, which would save households about $300 annually.
Wow. Wow. See, that's the numbers matter. And thank you so much for your expertise and thank you so much for really helping folks to understand more about what transmission lines even are and what they do. I appreciate you. And Tori's information will be in the chat if you want to learn more about, I mean, Lorelei, sorry. Lorelei's information will be in the chat. Tori will put that information in the chat. So thank you so much, Lorelei. All right. And speaking of affordability, I want to introduce our next panelist, who is leading the charge for affordability at the Center of Energy and Data Center Build Out. The champion is Maggie Shober. She is the research director at the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, or SACE. Her work can be seen all across the southeastern United States, and has a specific focus on work in Georgia and the Tennessee Valley. And so I've been so honored to work with Maggie in the past, and am glad Maggie is here to talk more about clean energy and SACE and her work with SACE and how we can bring more affordability to our utilities.
Thank you, Keyshawn. I'm honored to be here with y'all and talking about this today.
Awesome. So I'm gonna same thing. We're gonna dive right in because you
Great.
are an expert. You've done so much work. I've seen your work quoted on CNN, talked about all across Georgia. And so, one main theme that I continue to see is surrounded power demands. And so, with power demands and utilities both on the rise for consumers, what particular concerns do you have in regards to the proliferation of data centers, especially across the Southeast, where we're seeing really a targeted explosion?
Absolutely. Thank you, Keyshawn. This is central. And I think that the concern, my main concern is that utilities, the electric utilities, which make money by building stuff, are all too excited to build more stuff to accommodate these data centers. And we are seeing a proliferation of plans from electric utilities around the Southeast to build new generation, in particular, unfortunately, less of those big regional transmission projects that Lorelei mentioned. We do not have those as readily available in the Southeast, where we have vertically integrated utilities. But the utilities are just going gangbusters in building new power plants and particularly focusing on gas generation, and increasingly uh, pushing back their retirement of coal plants that were already set to retire, now and into the future. And so there's a huge risk from an affordability perspective because these power plants are very, very expensive. I can get into more of that. And obviously, from a pollution perspective, gas has huge implications from a carbon and a methane perspective. And coal, we know, has just, catastrophic, potentially catastrophic pollution coming from it, both air pollution, water pollution, the potential for pretty awful disasters. One example that we've been involved in, and I know a lot of folks are following, is in Georgia, where in December a lame duck commission approved 10 gigawatts of new generation by Georgia Power, including three very large gas power plants, all of which will need new gas pipelines leading to them. My background is in modeling electricity systems. And when do the modeling or the accounting for these, you usually include a lifetime for how long the plant is expected to operate and put that on people's bills for that time. So the customer's not paying for a new power plant in a single year. It's over a certain amount of time. For gas plants, that is usually like 25 to 30 years. And so for perspective, Georgia Power, because these gas plants are so expensive, they had to spread the costs out for 45 years. They go online in 2030. They will still be on Georgia Power customer bills in 2075. So that is just an extreme example of where the the need for these new power plants is clearly coming from the data centers. The costs are being spread across all of Georgia Power's customers. And that comes from the cost to build a power plant. These are really expensive, the cost to get the fuel,
Hmm.
and the cost of the pipeline.
Maggie, you are great at really illustrating what the financial implications of these data centers and all of what's being built out um, is doing and what it will do for the future. What I also want to know though is as on the advocate side and on the policy side, as people really fight for more affordability, what seems to be actually tracking, like what's actually gaining steam,
Yeah.
um, so that we can move toward a more equitable version of things.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll turn to Georgia again. Georgia is one of the few states in the country where they elect their public service commissioners directly. And last November, two of the five sitting commissioners were thrown out and replaced with folks that really campaigned on affordability. So that seems to be it definitely gained steam and is continuing. There are two more seats open for reelection this November. I think the other side of that is at state legislation. We're seeing quote unquote data center bills in a number of states across our region. Again, in Georgia, there was a hearing for one yesterday. It actually went kind of late into the night as they're discussing this in real time, how to actually put into law this talking point about data centers are paying 100% of the costs. And so we're seeing legislative proposals from both sides of the aisle across, we're seeing them in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, just to name a few. So I think there is momentum there. I think the question is going to be, does it rise to the level of some of these captured regulators, legislators, and whatnot, because we know that in a lot of states, electric utilities are one of the largest campaign donors to some of these folks. So
Yep. And I think you've done an incredible writing. I've read some of your work around that. And when I think about legislation and I think about policy, we cannot ignore, right, federal policy in the current administration. And so, just really quick, is there any one thing, right? And trust me, I know it's going to be extremely difficult with this administration, but is there something policy-wise around affordability on the federal level from this administration, by this administration, that people should have their eye on?
yeah, I think that federally, really looking at unfortunately, legislation is typically not the way to go, but looking at where the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, is going on things, and how they are trying to, for instance, back to Lorelei's point, push utilities that don't naturally work together to build transmission lines, to build those connections, so that they can lower costs for customers. So I think that there are a number of FERC dockets, which can get really wonky really quickly, but that are intended to, drive that kind of regional and hopefully interregional transmission planning. And that's where I would say that at the federal level, really affordability can be influenced. And then I think more importantly than the federal level is keep an eye on your what's going on in your state, because most of the states, except for Keyshawn, of course, you and I that live in TVA territory, most utilities are regulated at the state level.
Awesome. And thank you so much, Tori. I was about to ask you to break that down for us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And y'all, we will see Maggie in just a few more minutes. But thank you so much, Maggie, for this part of the
Thank you.
conversation. All right, y'all. My environmental bestie on the line, KD Minor. She's in Louisiana, stirring up all kind of good trouble. All across the country, though. Her skill, tenacity, the way she stands up for the community, it is unique and stands alone. Her energy and impact is one of a kind, and we can definitely use more of it. And so, want to welcome Katie Miner to the conversation.
My heart. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for that introduction. Hey,
What's going on? Good to
man,
have
I
you.
was speeding down the interstate to make it on time for this. I am so excited to download some of the things we just heard.
Yeah, so I mean, before we start, I want you to just kind of give folks background on where you were and just give us an update on what's happening.
Yeah. Again, my name is Katie Miner. I am the Community Solutions Manager for the Alliance for Affordable Energy. We are Louisiana's only consumer advocate at the Public Service Commission and New Orleans City Council. New Orleans is a bit unique, whereas the other 63 parishes in Louisiana are represented by the Public Service Commission, but here in New Orleans, we are regulated by our City Council. I actually got into this work on a quest to unwind exactly what carbon capture is. So back when Biden was in office and he released the IRA and IIJA, I was tapped to learn about this nascent industry, right? What is this thing? They want to start capturing pollution in a very polluted Louisiana and bury it underground. That makes no sense for people who eat crawfish, which come out of the ground, for people who fish and live off of the land. So I was over there minding my business. And then we started hearing these rumors or these announcements of something big coming. I mean, this is going to revolutionize industry and business in Louisiana, which is kind of hard to think about when you think of big oil and gas. They're here. They've been here since the early 1900s. So it really piqued our interest to hear that this was going to be something that we had never experienced before here in Louisiana. And lo and behold, we are now facing the influx of interest from big tech. Most recently with Meta, who announced world's largest data center will be in North Louisiana. And as recently as 2 days ago, Amazon announced 3 new campuses coming right to that Louisiana-Arkansas border. So I'm really getting concerned about what this little arc latex Mississippi northern corner borders or what's happening with you all in Mississippi, now us in Arkansas, and what that really means. Who is looking at cumulative impacts of putting all these things in the same close proximity?
Awesome. So a lot is happening.
A lot is
And
happening.
so what as it pertains to what just happened, um, I think what are the possible ramifications, or ripple effects people can expect to or should be unaware should be aware of happening across the country?
Absolutely. Just to make sure we're all on the same page, back in August of last year, that historic investment and that historic opportunity I've referred to looked like Meta approaching Entergy, which is our largest utility here in the state of Louisiana. It is also a monopoly, so they own their generation, their transmission, and their distribution. They came to our Public Service Commission and said, look, we actually want to build three brand new gas power plants for one customer. That does not happen. There was no process and no preparation we could do to get ready for something like that. So we were truly thrown into the ring. Um, they actually sped up the process. So what could typically take 2 years, they were able to do in less than 10 months, right? And in 10 months, they decided, yes, actually, you will get those three gas-fired power plants. And we were like, but who is paying for that? Because I'm not paying for it. And then
Mhm.
oil and gas came and they said, well, I'm not paying for it either. So who's actually going to pay for all this generation that we don't get a single benefit from, right? So they came back, they gave them the decision on the same day that they approved those three power plants. Meta did this creative accounting and completely restructured, right? So we got in
Mhm.
Louisiana on the ground, on one hand, three new gas-fired power plants, 30 years of power plant bills, all the transmission, all the infrastructure required for that. We got to figure out who's paying for that. But while y'all figure that out, we're actually going to restructure, right? We
Mhm.
are and this is the way I was processing it on the drive, right? Meta is no longer on the lease, or they are no longer the owner of the home, right? They are the tenant now. And that shell company that they propped up lately, they have the light bill, right? So the light bill is in the brand new company's name. And
Mhm.
there is no mention of the light bill in what they call the parent guarantee, right? So if and when Meta decides to jump ship, which they can now do after 4 years, as opposed to the original 15-year agreement, where's the teeth, right? If Laidley is just this brand new LLC with no assets, right? With nothing, it's brand new, who do we go or who can we go after for that parent guarantee? And it was very interesting because today, the way they were patting themselves on the back, and the they is the commission, they are saying, well, actually, Meta is, friend, you ever used Affirm or Klarna?
Klarna, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
ever
Well,
paid
I listen, I stay away from them, but I know who they are.
the
Yes.
protections that they refer to are essentially affirm payments, right? And so they
Mm,
are saying that Meta is paying these install in an installment plan on the construction. So you all don't
mm,
have to worry about any other costs, right?
mm.
The affirm plan is going to take care of that. And it just blew my mind that they are literally operating with trillions of dollars the same way that ratepayers who are struggling, they are also operating in the same way. It was just mind blowing to me.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Honestly, that definitely helps me to see it more clearly. But one thing that I know about debt is that it is not good to owe anyone, especially not to be entrapped in these long-term, short spliced debt where they continue to compound on you. And so, I don't know what we got to celebrate just yet. And so. I look forward to learning even more about how this goes, but thankful for your advocacy. And so I appreciate you bringing us up to speed, but also helping to break down what's going on. And so we will come back to you in just a few minutes. And in this moment, we're going to circle to our mentee moment and Tori.
Hey everybody, welcome to see some familiar faces. We're going to just do a quick Menti moment just to stretch our legs and kind of get involved in the conversation. If you've never used Menti before, you can either type menti.com on your phone or laptop or use the QR code to scan in. You'll type the code. And that will get you access to this little fun game that we're participating in. And this game, in this case, is more of a questionnaire because we really want these midweek Mythbusters to be informed by you, the audience, the people that are being affected by AI data centers and large energy bills and contaminated water and air and lack of accountability. And so with that, this time we're asking you to help us figure out what our next midweek Mythbuster topic is. And so you'll see these, I'll read these out loud so that you can know what they are, but you'll see them, the full names on your phone. And what you'll do is you can drag them to the top area where it says list out, and then you can rank them 1 through 5. Whichever one you want to know the most about first, put it at number 1. The one that you are least interested in, put it at number 5, and then rank them accordingly. And we'll be able to use that to kind of think about what our next topic is going to be. And so the first one is common ground on data centers. We love talking about common ground and smart approaches to reaching agreements. Global perspectives. We have a lot of international connections, and a lot of places internationally are doing it clean and sustainable. Trump's AI new policy, the implications that it has, and what a federal push might look like on our communities. Water-wise communities, the impacts from our community water. And then powering progress, protecting families, what you need to know before a clean energy data center decides to come into your neighborhood. And so feel free to join in and help respond. If you are watching in the chat and not maybe able to join in, you can always just give like a brief description. Common ground, protecting families, global agenda, Trump's agenda, and water. But you can see the rankings live as it goes on. Looks like common ground on data centers. That's stream.org's bread and butter. Perfect. This Menti will be live even after we close out. And so if you are thinking about, what would I really like to see? Feel free to add your responses into the Menti system even after we move on. But thank you everybody for helping us inform our work, and you can look forward to seeing our next midweek Mythbuster. I believe it's in May, our next one. Yeah, we'll let you know which topic comes up. I'll pass it back over to Keyshawn.
Appreciate you, Tori. Thank you so much, and I appreciate everybody for joining in that mentee moment. It is something that's very novel, and I think in webinars specifically, we need to engage with the audience a bit more. And I appreciate everybody's questions, comments, and I promise y'all, we will get to them. And so, moving right along, I want to bring back two of the panelists. Katie and Maggie. Maggie talked to us a little bit about what FERC is, what the importance of affordability when we think about energy can look like. And Katie talked about, really how these large data centers are, playing monopoly, right, in a sense. And so a few more questions for you all. First one being, because all three of us are based in the Southeast United States, just reflecting on the history, the legacy of environmental injustice in this specific corner of the country, what truly made you want to get involved with this work? And I'll start with Katie, who you spoke to it a little bit, but, like what brought you into it, knowing the real legacy, knowing the history?
Being from South Louisiana in particular, a place known infamously for what we call Cancer Alley, to the western part of the state where I'm from, Chemical Corridor, right off the Texas border. I have seen and lived and experienced what extractive industries look like, not just by driving by them through our health effects, right? Through how our kids learn and through how our women are able to give birth or not, or how our people can't even breathe the air, sheltering in place when there's a chemical spill or flaring that's happening. When a hurricane comes and you see these 40-foot flames shooting out of smokestacks because those chemical plants get to burn off things and in excess before a storm. I had no choice. Like I didn't become a part of this work. This work has always been my life, whether by choice or not. This has been my entire experience here in the South, and I've just seen how oftentimes we are left um, being a placeholder or a prop for other people's profits, right? And enough is enough. I have drawn my hard line in the sand this time around. I didn't have much choice and control over when they were drilling oil or when the BP oil spill happened or any of the things that have plagued our state in my 36 years. But I have a choice now. And so for Meta and for Amazon and for Anthropic, who has also announced a project here in my ancestral parishes here in Louisiana, I'm here. Enough is enough. And if you seek to continue to take from us, um, I'm a watchdog. That is my job. But that's also my life. That accountability piece, that's why I'm here. That the fact that I have neighbors and people in the state that know that they can call me for clarity and for direction and for just simple understanding. That is my favorite part about this, helping people parse through the noise. Yeah, they make it seem so complicated. Y'all understood affirm as soon as I said it. It is so simple to understand. And so being able to take those really bulky, technical, boring documents and proceedings and meetings and giving them to people in a way that shows them that none of this is inaccessible to any of us. It has increased public participation. It makes people feel like I can do this too. And that has been the most important thing to me as an adult. And when I think back about little girl me who did not know what to do when we experienced the world's largest, or at the time, the country's worst biological disaster when we had a chemical spill, um, I think she would be proud.
Wow. Just want to just hold space for just a second because that is the true experience of you of so many families in the Southeast that don't necessarily feel like they have an outlet or really have the ability to do what they know is necessary. And so, thank you for your advocacy and thank you for your story. And so, Maggie, same thing. You have seen all across the Tennessee Valley for sure, environmental injustice and the projects that manifest themselves through it. And so, what brought you to your advocacy?
I appreciate that, Keisha, and I also want to say thank you, KD, for sharing that. I appreciate hearing that story. I think one of the things that it's important to kind of bring our perspective as to why the Southeast is so important for these reasons. The U.S. our country's largest both on land and on water environmental disasters have both happened here in the Southeast. The Kingston coal ash spill, not too far from where I am in East Tennessee. And then not long after that, the Deepwater Horizon catastrophe in the Gulf that impacted, several of the Gulf states. And both of those were related to energy industries, oil drilling, coal from, the strip mines all the way through to how we're storing the ash. There's just a horrific environmental justice legacy in this region. And it's important that we are all, as folks are working in this space, like you said, Keisha, making space for that. And then doing what Katie's talking about, using it to, power our work, because it's just so inspiring to hear these stories, and to be a part of this work to, you know, move on from that, and move forward.
Thank you so much. And just to add on to what you both have contributed is, in Memphis specifically, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. came to march with sanitation workers who were on strike because they were being submitted to environmental injustice that led to the death of two of their colleagues. And subsequently, as you all may know the story, Dr. King, during that time, he was assassinated. And to be assassinated while supporting the the sanitation workers, right? The folks who are cleaning up the trash, the servants of everyone. And to me, it made me realize that the truth about what we are doing is service. And the truth is that to be in service to people, you have to have a heart for people. And so I thank you both for the heart that you have and the heart that you bring to the work. And Memphis Community Against Pollution will continue to be partners with you all and to dream.org as well. And so, y'all, let me move us forward. And let's bring Loralei back because we got a few other questions that we want to talk about in our Q&A.
Hi.
You're back. All right. And so there is a Q&A. I'm not sure, y'all, how we're going to get the questions on the screen, but I am looking for them.
I can read them out loud.
Oh, okay.
So
Let's do it.
we have a question from Tiffany. Says, my question is, how can we get water clean as well as the air? And there's a side comment that in Jackson is really bad right now. So maybe we could talk about that in relation to transmissions, or if there's been any progress within the communities that you guys live in.
I can jump in on a little bit of that, but happy for other panelists as well. I think that depending on, I mean, if we're talking specifically about um, power generation related to data centers, obviously there's some that are more or less polluting on the water side, whereas some have more, of an air pollution concern. I think there's also, in instances where data centers are using water directly. And so that's obviously a major concern and something to look for, as folks are organizing, locally around a data center, to look out for that piece as well. I mean, we know that coal in particular is a very polluting resource of both the air and the water. I think the federal decision to roll back the mercury standards is just one example of one way that coal pollutes our water. Folks have heard that pregnant people can't eat fish or want to limit that. Guess what? That's because coal, we've burned so much coal, the mercury from that coal has leached into water all around, and then builds up in the fish. And that's that's the reason, the direct result. They can, pull that back to the mercury from the coal plants. So I think that working on moving towards clean energy resources is one of probably many ways to work on cleaning up water in your area.
Yeah, I'll jump in really quick around air quality. And one thing that I do understand a lot more clearly now after really opposing XAI's Colossus data centers here in Memphis and their methane gas turbines is that there usually is a local water authority, I mean air authority. And so we have a air pollution control board, and maybe there is an environmental organization that is in charge of your air quality standards. And so in Mississippi, it's the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality. In Memphis, we have our Shelby County Health Department and the Air Pollution Control Board. But either of those bodies where you are, you want to really look at the permitting process and see how to make more stringent air quality rules and determinations. Usually, they have regulations that are just not being enforced. So
Yeah,
let's,
if I
yep,
can just jump in real quick, I just want to
yes.
say clean water regulation is similar in, well, in some ways to Clean Air Act regulation, although it is also a little bit different. But depending on the body of water being impacted, could be regulated by U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, could be regulated by EPA, could be regulated by your state clean water agency, could even be regulated by a local clean water agency. Really, it depends. And they kind of do that on purpose so that you have no idea what's going on and you don't know who to talk to. Sometimes you have to talk to multiple people, and that's hard and something that I know we are working on to try to make it easier for people to even do that outreach and know where to go in the first place because it is incredibly complicated for literally no reason. One thing people should look out for is that this administration has been for the past year aggressively been trying to roll back Clean Water Act protections in very substantive ways. They're trying to change the definition of what a body of water is legally so that your regulatory bodies would no longer be able to regulate certain bodies of water. For people in water scarce areas, especially Arizona, California, the western states, you could be impacted if these Clean Water Act reforms move forward, both in Congress and the reforms that are being proposed at EPA. So yeah, I mean, it's I think it's really figuring out who it is you have to talk to. Sometimes it's one person, sometimes it's multiple layers of people. And then also trying to remain cognizant of what the Trump administration is doing to make it even more difficult for the people who are supposed to protect you.
I mean, that just kind of sums it up toward the end. That's exactly what we're seeing all over the country. But to that end, right, knowing that there is so much opposition against moving us in the right way into a greener grid, what would you all say? I guess really quickly, maybe like a sentence or two each, about how do we get from where we are here to a more just future as it pertains to energy. I'll start with Katie and then Loralei and then Maggie.
Absolutely. I think our path to a cleaner future starts with community. It's important that at every stage of any process of any of these developments, whether it's to put up a utility pole or to build new generation, the people in closest proximity, the most impacted people from these decisions need to be at the table.
And then Lorelai.
Uh, I really just want to echo everything that KD said. I know this administration is doing everything they can to minimize the amount of public input that would be required uh, for anything pertaining to data center regulation. Um, yeah, really, it is just centering the communities that are being directly impacted. Uh, and also, I think there are things that the government can do, federal and state, to make their planning less opaque and to make it less complicated and easier for people to understand. Uh, I think that when people are able to participate, that's how we avoid some of the disastrous consequences that we've been seeing. Yeah.
Well said. And then Maggie.
Yeah, I agree with KD and Lorelei about community involvement and transparency. Absolutely. I think that, we know what would clean our power system. We need renewables, storage, transmission, tons of energy efficiency. We live in some pretty energy efficient homes. So focus on those. And I think, letting finding out more about your utility and how they do those planning processes is really important. If it's your city council or your state commission, if it's the TVA board, whoever it is, make sure you know who is making and approving those decisions, and let them know what you want to see happen.
There y'all have it, from the experts, from the people on the ground, from the people doing the work every day in, day out. Thank you so much, KD. Thank you, Loralei. Thank you, Maggie. I'm going to turn it over to EJ.
Thank you, panel. What a wonderful discussion. So much fruitful information. I know a lot of the resources were shared in the chat, but Dream.org will be sending out a one-pager with all the links that we also shared. So don't worry if you did not catch it. We will make sure that you get all the resources from both the panelists and Dream. So super excited about that. As we wrap up, I want to thank each of you for showing up and staying engaged in this conversation. The work that you are doing locally and coalitions and alongside impacted communities is what makes accountability possible. And today is a strong reflection of that shared commitment. What we have heard this afternoon makes one thing really clear. Decisions tied to data center growth and are already driving real consequences for families and communities. And it is very clear that transparency, community engagement, accountability, everything that each of you are doing right now is not optional. And they must be built into these decisions in order for us to have less harm inflicted on our communities. Following this webinar, as I mentioned, we will be sharing various different resources through a one-pager, so please check your email. I know the team also shared ways that you can get engaged with the campaign as well. So though all those links and text information will be available to each of you. To our moderator, to our panelists, thank you, thank you, thank you. I think I could have heard another hour of you all talking because you have so much knowledge and expertise in this area. So I'm really excited about continued partnership with each of you. Thank you, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week. We are grateful to be in partnership with each of you, and we look forward to continuing this work together. Have a good one.